Today we're going to talk about 10 reasons why Andor is going to be amazing. Cassian Andor from Rogue One is getting his own series next year, and it seems like it's in the shadows of shows like Obi Wan, the Book of Boba Fett, and Ahsoka. Now, while there are a lot of reasons why those shows can be great, I think Andor provides a lot of unique possibilities that the other shows cannot replicate. For example, I think Cassian Andor is much more likely to destroy the like button for the YouTube algorithm as opposed to Boba Fett. But seriously, hitting the like button really does help this channel out with the YouTube algorithm, so make sure you hit that like button, and if you end up not liking the video, you can always switch to a dislike. Anyway, let's get on with the video. Reason number 1 is that Cassian Andor was a Separatist. During the Clone Wars, there was the Republic versus the Separatists, and the Separatists lost the war. So when Cassian Andor was a little boy, he was a part of the Confederacy of Independent Systems. Now, why is this a reason why the show is going to be amazing? In my most recent video on episode 10 of the Bad Batch, I talked about how former Separatists living under the rule of the Empire is a very unique concept. It actually makes a lot of sense that the people who rebelled against the Republic would now rebel against the Empire. Seeing the supposed bad guys of the prequel trilogy form the rebellion, which become the good guys of the original trilogy, is something that's very unique, and I like it. The story potential of this show reminds me of that one episode from Star Wars Rebels where Kanan, Ezra, and Rex have to work together with some decommissioned battle droids to destroy the Empire. Former enemies working together to defeat an even bigger enemy. Also, we don't have many stories that dive deep into Separatist beliefs. Now, this could all be for nothing considering Cassian Andor was only 7 years old during the end of the Clone Wars. But since this show is called Andor, I really do think they're gonna explore his backstory, and that includes the fact that he was a Separatist. Reason number 2 is that we get to see the darker aspects of the rebellion. When Rogue One was coming out, there was a lot of anticipation for this idea. In the original trilogy, the rebels were undisputedly the good guys, and the Empire was undisputedly the bad guys. There was a promise in Rogue One that we were going to see a more morally gray rebellion. We did get that great scene in the beginning where Cassian kills an informant of his in cold blood, but besides that, we really didn't get anything else. I think we're going to get more of that rebellion that we saw in the beginning of Rogue One. A desperate group of people that will have to make hard choices that ultimately will benefit the rebellion. This is something that I want to see Cassian Andor struggle with. He may be on a mission where he's given a task that ultimately will help out the rebellion, but at the same time, it will come at a great cost. There's a canon novel called Battlefront 2 Inferno Squad based off of the video game, where a bunch of rebels want to blow up a children's school to help send a message to the Empire. Doing that would definitely send a message to the Empire, but at the cost of children's lives, innocent children's lives. These are the kinds of decisions that reveal character. Since Cassian won't die in the show because, spoiler alert, he dies in Rogue One, there needs to be something at stake for him that's not his life. I think surrounding him with other characters that are affected by this darker rebellion is the way to go with this show. Anyway, a darker rebellion is definitely interesting. At number 3, we have the antithesis of number 2, and that is we get to see more of the Empire. There was a rumor that Orson Krennic from Rogue One would appear in the series, and if that's true, that means we're definitely going to see more of the Empire. The thing about the Empire that a lot of the canon shows haven't explored is that there are a lot of good people in the Empire fighting for what they believe is a good cause. The notion of a stronger government that brings all these systems under one umbrella is not an evil notion. What makes the Empire evil is that the literal archetype of the devil serves as its emperor. Maybe the show has a lot of good people fighting for the Empire, and then as the show progresses, they learn the truths and end up defecting to the rebellion. I think we can get a character like Agent Kallus in live-action form. A lot of people, including myself, have referred to Agent Kallus's arc as a redemption arc. Now, while Kallus was definitely a dick, from his perspective, he was just fighting a bunch of terrorists. I hope we get those good people in the Empire fighting for what they believe is that good cause. And if they defect to the rebellion, it's not so much them redeeming themselves because at heart, they're good people, they were just hoodwinked by their emperor. Even if we don't get this aspect of the Empire, I think just seeing the nuances of how the Empire is run is very interesting. Even though we've gotten a lot of the Empire in many canon stories, I still think there's a lot you can do with the Empire that audiences haven't seen before. At number 4, we can see the politics of Star Wars. Despite what people on the internet may say, Star Wars has always had serious political undertones that the series is trying to explore. I think there's a lot of potential to explore these political undertones in Andor. One concept that fascinates me is that we've never seen the Senate run under the Empire. The last time we saw a Senate meeting chronologically was in Revenge of the Sith, and that was when Palpatine declared himself Emperor. What is politics like under the Empire? It took 19 years after the events of Revenge of the Sith for Palpatine to disassemble the Imperial Senate, which happened in A New Hope. Why did it take him so long? What was the Senate like for those 19 years? There had to be a reason why Palpatine couldn't just get rid of the Senate during Revenge of the Sith. I want to see political discourse in this show. How did we go from a thunderous applause for the rise of the Empire in Revenge of the Sith to a planet-wide celebration for the fall of the Empire in Return of the Jedi? I think a Star Wars movie doesn't have time for political debates, but a Star Wars show definitely does. We can explore how certain systems are loyal to the Empire or how certain systems get involved with the rebellion. Now, I don't want this to be the focus of the show, but I think it being included in the show is a great idea. At number 5, we have the fact that season 1 is going to be 12 episodes long. Just to set some context, both seasons of The Mandalorian are 8 episodes long, and the longest Disney Plus series that we've had is WandaVision, which was 9 episodes long. 12 episodes of around 40 minutes long really gives the writers time to explore these characters while it not feeling unnecessarily long. Fans have complained that The Mandalorian with only 8 episodes was way too short. That shouldn't be a problem here. This is kind of the same point, but supposedly Andor is not going to be a limited series. There are plans for a second season and maybe a third. According to Alan Tudyk, K2SO is supposed to appear in the second season, which is kind of weird because 2 years ago he was there at D23 to announce the series, so yeah. Regardless, if you're a fan of longer season shows, I think this show may be for you. At number 6, we have the possibility of Ahsoka Tano appearing. Just for context, this show takes place 5 years before the events of Rogue One. If you're a student of Star Wars history like I am, then you know that this series takes place right before or during season 1 of Rebels. And at the end of season 1 of Rebels, we learn that Ahsoka is Fulcrum. So we know that Ahsoka must be involved with the rebellion in some form. It would make total sense that she could be an active part of Andor because she is a part of the rebellion. In the Rogue One reference guide, it also references that Cassian Andor himself was once given the codename Fulcrum. Is it a coincidence that Ahsoka and Cassian were both Fulcrums? Maybe. Now, if you follow my channel regularly, you know I'm not a big fan of all these cameo appearances. I think this is currently a big problem with the Bad Batch. But given the time period of this story and given where these two characters are during this time period, I think it makes complete sense that these two characters would run into each other. Also, this version of Ahsoka would be old enough to where I still think Rosario Dawson could play her. If there was an Ahsoka series that took place after the Clone Wars, then Rosario Dawson playing Ahsoka would make no sense because at that point Ahsoka is still a teenager. But in Andor, we can get an older, more mature Ahsoka, which Rosario Dawson plays beautifully. But anyway, an older Ahsoka would definitely be neat to see. Reason number 7 is that Saw Gerrera will appear in this series. Saw Gerrera from Rogue One is probably my single favorite character in the whole franchise to meme. I love Crazy Saw and I want to see more of that. But in all seriousness, I think the more interesting aspect of Saw Gerrera is not so much Saw Gerrera himself, but the people that surround Saw. In Rogue One and Rebels, we learn that Saw is the leader of an extremist group of rebels. Remember how I mentioned in that one Star Wars book, Inferno Squad, how there was a group of rebels that wanted to blow up a school? Those rebels were Saw Gerrera's rebels. This kind of piggybacks off of my second point, but having Saw in this show does show us a darker rebellion. Remember how I mentioned how it would be cool to see Imperials that were genuinely good people? Imagine if we saw rebels that were genuinely bad people. Saw Gerrera and his partisans are those kinds of people. Maybe the conflict in the series isn't so much about Cassian and the rebels versus the Empire, but it's Cassian and the rebels versus other kinds of rebels. That is unique. Saw Gerrera and his partisans only serve to cause more problems for rebels like Cassian Andor, and therefore there is a lot of story potential for that. At number 8, we have a fresh take on Star Wars. Now, this point is a little vague, sure, but it's a point I want to mention. If we look at every Star Wars show that has been released, Dave Filoni has been involved in a pretty big way. As far as I'm aware, Dave Filoni has no involvement in this show. But Goldman, you've made videos about how much you love Rebels and the Clone Wars and the Mandalorian. Why are you so anti-Dave Filoni now? First of all, I'm not anti-Dave Filoni. I love almost all of his work. But just because I love love a lot of what Dave Filoni has done, that doesn't mean I want him to be involved with every single Star Wars project. Star Wars has an infinite number of stories that could be told, and thousands of different people that could tell those stories. I think Star Wars would become pretty dull if every single story was made by Dave Filoni. I want this show to feel different. I don't want it to feel like I'm watching The Mandalorian with different characters. I want this show to have its own style and its own identity, and without Dave Filoni, I think that is a great possibility. At number 9, we have the potential to tie in with other stories. Now, I need to be very clear with what I'm about to say. I don't want this show to rely on other material. I think a good example of how to tie in with other stories is The Mandalorian Season 2. You don't need to know who Bo-Katan is, or who Ahsoka is, or really who Luke is to understand the story that is being told in The Mandalorian Season 2. But for fans who have consumed those other stories with Ahsoka, Luke, and Bo-Katan, it gives us a greater appreciation for the storytellers and the story. You ever wonder why it really bothers certain fans when books or comics are contradicted or retconned in the shows and movies? It's because when a fan reads a canon comic or book, yeah, they're trying to get a good story, but in the back of their mind, they're thinking this is a part of the official Star Wars continuity, that what they're reading actually happens in the Star Wars universe. So if it gets contradicted in a show or a movie, it makes the reader feel like an idiot because they just wasted their time reading something that didn't end up mattering at all. And when the movies or shows do connect to those books or comics, it makes the readers happy because it makes them feel like what they read wasn't a waste of time, because what they did read actually happened in the shows or movies, or tied into the shows or movies. The same thing applies here to connections with other material in Star Wars. While certain fans aren't going to be upset if certain connections aren't made, they're certainly going to be happy if certain connections are made. For example, this Cassian Andor series is going to take place around the same time of Rebels, so I think small connections to Rebels would really make certain fans happy, including myself. But given the time period of this show, I definitely think there's a lot of potential for certain connections. And my last point is a simple one that doesn't need much explanation. Darth Vader could appear in the show. Now, I'm not someone who particularly cares about seeing Darth Vader in this series. I don't like cameos all that much, so seeing him not appear wouldn't upset me. But I know Darth Vader matters to a lot of people, so the possibility of him appearing in this show should excite you. Also, considering Darth Vader seems to be the biggest draw for Star Wars fans and the casual audience, I think it's likely that Lucasfilm will put him in this show. I would be shocked if Darth Vader did not appear in the series. By the way, I wanted to give a quick shout out to Michael Dean. He is the one who made the intro at the beginning of this video, and I love it. So thank you so much, Michael. I really appreciate it. And those are all the reasons why the Cassian Andor show is going to be amazing. Thank you everyone so much for watching another one of my videos. Don't forget to check out the Claude Squad, and I will see you guys next time.